Hello, and welcome to Differentiate Your Inventory Through Immersive Online Merchandising. This automotive news powered training webinar is brought to you by HomeNet. We're delighted you're with us today. I'm Jackie Charnaga, F&I reporter at Automotive News. Before I introduce our speaker today, a few navigation tips. First, we encourage you to ask questions at any time. Just type them into the Q&A box on the left side of the webinar window and then hit Submit. I will steer your questions to our speaker towards the end of this session. Also, to enlarge the slides, just grab the frame with your mouse and pull it larger. And to download the slides, click on the Handouts icon at the bottom of your console. Today's speaker is Russ Daniels. Russ is the Senior Manager of Product Marketing for HomeNet Automotive and vAuto. Russ serves as the voice of the consumer to understand industry trends in an effort to launch market product offerings that dealers find valuable. And now I'll turn it over to Russ to get us started.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Thanks, everybody, for coming in and joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending on the time zone that you're in. Really excited to be back on the Automotive News webinar to talk about a topic that I've been thinking about and immersed myself in over the last 10 years, and that's the concept of automotive merchandising. But before we go deep into automotive, I wanted to kind of set the table for what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, you look at this slide and you may think, oh, this is just another story about Blockbuster and all the misses that they had in terms of being able to partner better with Netflix, or how Netflix leapfrogged them and really kind of disrupted, and now Blockbuster's business is gone. Well, that's not really why I show this slide today. I want to kind of drive deeper into the real mistake, the real why behind Blockbuster's failure those 10, 15 years ago. It was because they were unable to see the early signs of where their business was going to evolve. And they had this really strong brick-and-mortar presence in the local communities. And what they failed to do was they failed to connect the digital side of their business with the physical side of their business. You can still operate with a brick-and-mortar location, but we all know that in terms of researching products, whether it's something as small as a video that you want to rent for the weekend, or larger purchases like the industry that we are in automotive, that starts online. And Blockbuster kind of ignored that side of the business, didn't set up anything in terms of a digital storefront. And that really enabled Netflix and what now is the streaming services that we all know and love that Blockbuster could have gotten deeper into earlier. By ignoring the digital side of the business, they really missed the bigger trends. Now, over the last 10 years, I've certainly seen a rather large shift of focus from the physical side of us as dealer operators to the digital side. And that is good. But I think we need to continue to double down on our thinking there and start to really think about that digital side of our business and how that connects to the physical side of our business. And that goes back into a question that we're asking ourselves every single day. And what does it mean to be truly frontline ready? And I think this graphic does a good job displaying where we are in the industry. You look at the left side, that's more the physical side, right? That is reconditioning side, being able to efficiently take cars that you either get off trade-in, off-lease units, auction units, and be able to bring them into your store, recondition them of high quality, but still be able to get them to the front line fast so we can enable the test drive experience and that deeper experience. And, I've had a lot of conversations with a colleague of mine, Mike Boyd. He's founder of iRecon, and he really thinks deep thoughts about the reconditioning process. And he actually helped me think about, there's this physical side, and then there is the digital side, which is the graphic on the right, which is digital frontline ready. And that's getting the cars quickly online, but not just quickly online with no pricing, no description, and a stock photo. Getting that car fully merchandised, creating an immersive, differentiated experience, so when the consumer lands on your vehicle details page, they have all of the content they need to make an informed decision, and you've elevated your game from a merchandising perspective, so you stand out from other dealers that are also advertising vehicles online on third-party sites and others. And the right side of this graphic, the digital frontline ready side, is what we're really going to dig into in the webinar today. And I'm going to do that from a couple different angles. First, we're going to talk about kind of your basic blocking and tackling when it comes to merchandising, photos, and where is that going from a best practices perspective. How are photos kind of driving consumer behavior from a search results page to a vehicle details page engagement perspective. We're going to dig into there. We're also going to dig into some of the newer trends that are going on with merchandising, how video is, kind of come and is now at our doorstep and now being evolved into more immersive 360 technologies. We're going to dive into that as well. We're going to dive into all of the different places where the inventory should live. So when you syndicate or distribute that inventory out to all of your different advertising sites, where are the trends going? How is merchandising impacting that? We're going to dive into that, and then we're going to wrap it all up. So that's kind of the pathway of what we're going to do on the webinar today. But before we even dive anything deeper, I wanted to make one promise to you. All of the topics that I'm going to hit on today, I quantify them. So we back it up by either usage data on really large third-party sites, within inventory tools, or within research that's either been done by Cox Automotive or another source. So as we talk about best practices, know that we're validating these things through research and data to really help you make informed decisions, to help you merchandise your cars effectively, to differentiate but also efficiently, so you're spending your time right to go back to turning that inventory and selling cars. And we know that merchandising is important. It's important to us as dealership operators, and we know because we asked. We asked last year in a pretty seminal product study that we did at HomeNet, how much is merchandising really moving the needle from the dealer's perspective? And I think these two insights really wrap it up nicely. Over 80% of dealers that we surveyed in the study really believe that merchandising can help them improve inventory turn, help them differentiate themselves from the competition. Yet just over 10% of those dealers feel like their merchandising is differentiated or distinguished from their competition. That's a really big spread. So we have over 80% that really think merchandising is going to help them stand out, but just over 10% say that they think they're standing out today. Pretty big gap. So as we go through the presentation today, my goal is to provide best practices to close that gap a little bit. If we understand that merchandising is important, I think we do because we're all in this webinar together, that's the first step. Now let's think about how we can make that stand out and really appeal to car shoppers. Speaking of car shoppers, that experience is evolving as well. And you look here at the amount of time that shoppers across new and used car are spending time researching vehicles. And we're looking at the 2019 buyer journey study from Cox Automotive, really good study that gets put out every year, and we've been putting this out for a couple years now, and you can start to see some interesting year-over-year numbers. And what you're looking at is used car shoppers, new car shoppers over the last 2 years are spending less time researching vehicles. Yet when you look at the types of things they're doing to research the inventory before they go into your store, a vast majority, I'm talking over 88% of that, is online. So they're spending less time researching, but they're still using online as a really prominent source to making a decision about the product that you have. So what does that say? That says that we need to evolve our merchandising and our marketing strategy to be able to make a quicker and more meaningful connection with the car shopper. It needs to get done fast. You need to create high-quality information and need to serve it up faster because there is that shrinking window of opportunity with the consumer. I wanted to bring in this McKinsey used car survey study that came out recently. I don't know if anybody's seen the study, but I just was digging into it. I found it really, really interesting. The top 5 barriers to online purchase. And I'm not going to talk too deep today about digital retailing, that end-to-end process. There's a lot of good content out about that. Focus specifically on that merchandising component and how it's driving engagement. And you can look at the kind of second and third ones from the left. I cannot trust the quality of the car until I see it in person. And it's hard to know exactly what you are purchasing when you're searching online. And then at the bottom here, what McKinsey did was serve up some best practices or recommendations to overcome that digital retailing barrier. And two things really stick out. That first bullet, right under the 52%, the full list of repairs made during the reconditioning process. I think that's really interesting from a merchandising perspective. So are we putting reconditioning and condition details into our descriptions? Are we putting them into our photo overlays? A couple things to kind of keep in the back of your mind as we go through the content today. And then finally, under the 46%, clear photos that reveal any visible dents, dings, scratches. This is about that transparency aspect, where stock photos are just not really moving the needle in terms of engagement with online shoppers. They're getting smarter. They have access to more data than they ever had before to make an informed decision, and they really want that personalized, that real VIN-level story to be told about the inventory. So let's start to break that into merchandising now and really start to validate that against engagement from consumers. Let's talk about photos. Photos are kind of that flagship primary component of merchandising that we all know. And I've seen things like photo coverage on vehicles online increase year over year, the amount of photos being captured increasing or at least becoming more efficient and effective year over year. But this is just really interesting. These are just end of 2018, early 2019 numbers. I've shown similar graphics on other webinars that I've done, but this is more refresh data. And what you're looking at are vehicles online with different photo scenarios. And we're comparing those in terms of search results pages and vehicle details page engagement. So there's, I think, 6 categories. I'm just going to focus us on 3 today. Let's go down to the third one, a single custom photo versus a stock photo. Stock photo is representational, right? You look at the engagement from search results pages to vehicle details pages across new and used car. You see over 190% improved engagement for just a single real photo of the inventory, over 170% on the new car side. So what does that speak to? That speaks to when you actually start merchandising. Do you start that after the car is delivered on the lot, if you got it from auction or from a trade? If it's already on your lot, do you take it through the reconditioning process and then go ahead and start capturing photos, writing description, doing video in 360? This is all about when the clock starts. And what this tells me is even getting a single photo of that inventory on the used car side before it goes through reconditioning, or right on the new car side, right after post-delivery inspection, just getting a single photo of that car is really driving a lot more engagement compared to whether it's 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, 10 days or more, your reconditioning process. Stock photos just aren't driving the right engagement. Let's go down to the next one, multiple custom photos versus a stock photo. Again, I'm seeing photo coverage. I'm seeing really robust photo streams being captured across new and used inventory, so I think we know that multiple photos really drive the engagement. But just look at that sheer amount of vehicle details page clicks from multiple custom photos to a stock photo. It's just staggering. Those are really, really big numbers. This speaks to keeping your process efficient because you see the engagement that it's driving, so as quickly as you can get that process started, the better. And obviously the right photos are going to matter. Now I'll talk a little bit about the average amount of photos that I'm seeing from consumer research and also from the data that I have access to. We're also going to talk about a little bit later how multiple custom photos can actually impact your search results on major third-party sites. I'm going to go to the second to last one, just right under that last one we were talking about, multiple custom photos versus a stock photo. Again, just really big increases in terms of getting a full set of photos on the inventory versus taking maybe one single photo of the inventory and then, just kind of keeping it as is. It's a common question that I get. Russ, I'm starting to merchandise a little bit earlier in the process, before reconditioning, right after the new car arrives off the truck. Does it really make sense to drive, back to that car, take a full set of photos? Is it going to get me any lift? Well, the data here says that it does. It gets you really significant lift. Now, caveat on the single custom photo piece, if you have a car from auction and it really has a lot of work that needs to be done, or you get a trade-in vehicle, it's just in really bad shape on the exterior, you don't want to take a photo of that, obviously. You know, you're going to use your eye to judge. But a lot of times, especially off-lease vehicles, trade-in vehicles, maybe they need a little bit of work on the interior to clean them up, get it ready for the test drive. But the exterior is good enough to get just a few photos. I'm seeing some things in the chat. Jackie, Libby, just want to be sure everybody can hear me okay.
Yeah, you should be good.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure everybody was hearing me okay. So we know this, right? We know that photos are driving engagement. We know that this concept of pre-merchandising, or not waiting until it's fully physical frontline ready, is a good best practice to make sure that we're getting cars digitally on the front line faster to drive that engagement. Now let's talk about that concept of multiple photos and what's the right amount of photos to take. I want you to kind of take a mental note before I go to this next slide. And how many photos do you think I'm taking on average across my new car and my used car inventory? Just take a quick little mental note. What do you think it is? Because what I'm about to show you is a consumer study that says what are the average amount of photos across new and used cars that really drive the consumer to make that next step in the purchasing process. And then I'll also bounce that up against data that I have access to that the HomeNet Auto team has provided to me. Having, syndicating millions of cars online every day, we can actually look at the data that says the average amount of photos. Before I kind of pull the curtain and show you that, just know that just always think about that car. Think about that VIN and what's the best way. How many photos does it take to tell that story? If it's a base level sedan, yeah, maybe only a few photos can tell that story. If it's a fully loaded truck and there's a lot of different components on the exterior and the interior, then good idea to go and shoot several photos of that. So I show you this slide to merely give you the data and just bounce that up against your process. But remember, it's always about that car that you're shooting. So if you look at the average amount of photos from the consumer study, 10 on new car, 12 on used car, it's a little low, right? We shoot a lot more photos, and you can see the averages on the right across new and used car, 19 on new, 24 on used. A little bit different in terms of our averages. This doesn't imply that we should take less photos of the inventory. This probably means there's some redundant photos that we capture, so the consumer is thinking, well, it's 20 photos, but it really is 12 because maybe they're not connecting with all of the exterior shots or all of the interior shots. But just bounce this up against your process. If you're way over this, maybe it's something to think about. Should we take 50 photos on every single car? Or should we be more selective? Can we be more efficient? Are there cars that are really hot movers, really favorable from a market day supply perspective, where we want to take the right shots on it, but we're thinking based on the pricing and the market day supply that that inventory is going to move a little quicker, maybe adjust the merchandising strategy based on that. So this data should baseline your thinking. And this is kind of that basic blocking when it comes to merchandising. Let's think about how to maybe dress those photos up a little bit. Because when you think about taking high-quality actual photos of the inventory, another thing that can come into play is how focused or distracted are those photos. Is there telephone poles in the background? Is there a gas station across the street? There's a lot of logistical things we need to think about when we're taking photos of our inventory. So there's a couple different ways we've seen that get solved. One of them is you get a photo booth installed at the dealership. And I've seen a lot of dealers have a lot of success with that. Not always the case, not always the answer for every dealership everywhere. There's a couple downsides to that. There's that upfront investment to get the photo booth installed. That's obviously one. You might not have the capital to make that happen. The other one is and the bigger one is the spatial limitations. So you might not just have space to put a photo booth in there with enough coverage that you can walk fully around the car, make sure you get a full walk-around video or 360, or the photos are at the right level from a focus and zoom perspective. And you're not going to take a service bay away. You're not going to slow down reconditioning because that's going to hurt other sides of profit in your business. So if these are concerns for you, another option, an alternative, is letting the technology work for you. And I've seen a lot of dealerships start to think about photo backgrounding solutions as that option. And those are the examples that you're seeing here. And you've got an actual photo of the inventory at the top. Actually not so bad, but there's still a tree and there's some things in there. And then you can see the photo of the vehicle extracted out and put onto not distracting photo backgrounds. It looks like a photo booth. It's meant to eliminate anything that isn't that car so the consumer can really, really focus on all the details to make that informed decision, keeping in mind that they spend less time making that decision year over year. So a couple different things there to consider. I mean, again, I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and photo backgrounding has really evolved. I wasn't a big believer many years ago because there was a lot of photo backgrounds of cars on the beach and on the moon, different things like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about letting technology-driven photo backgrounding really make the car stand out from, for the consumer, but also stand out from the competition. But like everything that we've been talking about today, I wanted to validate that against research. So we kind of observed. We looked at search results pages to vehicle details page clicks on AutoTrader for cars that had photo backgrounds and ones that had actual photos, not stock photo. And these dealers were in a similar area of the country with a similar tier of product with AutoTrader. We tried to level the playing field. We took a look at thousands of listings over a 30 to 90-day period of time. And what we found was photo backgrounded images give 5% more vehicle details page clicks than those photos without photo backgrounded images. So a couple things here. One, there is a lift. But secondly, when you think about the other slide that I showed you, not as big of a lift as shooting the photos earlier or eliminating the time where you have stock photos on the inventory. So it's just another way to think about letting a technology solution take that on versus that up a photo booth inside of your dealership. So a couple things to consider there. Actually, one thing that I didn't show, a slide that I didn't show, was the perception on the dealership. We'll get to that a little bit when we get to the more immersive technologies. We did another consumer study and actually found out that dealers not messing with the actual vehicle itself, but using photo backgrounded, are actually perceived to be more innovative and have a more positive perception from the consumer than those that aren't doing it. Again, because you're helping them stay focused. So we talked about the basics on photos, a way to eliminate distractions. I'd like to stay within photos, but really talk about something that I think is one of the bigger missed opportunities, low-hanging fruit in terms of merchandising best practices. And that's the content we put inside of the photo. I'm talking about photo overlays. And you see at the bottom just an example that we created for the presentation. It's got dealership branding. It could have a phone number. It could have a website. These are things that you still want to do, especially on third-party sites. It's going to help you stand out. And we've been doing that for a long time, and that really helps with branding. But then we kind of stopped for the most part. We stopped doing anything else in terms of injecting the content. Maybe we'll put a Carfax One owner in there, and that's good. But there's ways to elevate the game, and a lot of dealers are having success putting different content inside the photo. And here's just an example that I've shown. And these are equipment details inside. So heated seats, heads-up display. These are things that are going to be on the equipment list. They're going to be in the vehicle description. But we don't know if the consumers are going to make it down there lower on the VDP. We do know that when they go from the search results page to the vehicle details page, they're looking at that visual immersive content. They're looking at the photos. They're looking at video. They're looking at 360. So here's an opportunity to really serve up relevant content. And equipment is just one of those things. If there's a really good opportunity to serve up condition information. What reconditioning details have done? Are there new tires? Did we put a new coat of paint on this? Was there something that we did that is really going to help them from a used car perspective understand that this is the right one for them, and we've done work to it to make sure it's ready for them to get into and walk out with that day? Really good places to put CPO, certified information about the inventory. And as technologies evolve, it's getting easier and easier. I think a lot of the challenges many years ago was you maybe have to get a third-party program or do it in Photoshop, hire someone to do it. There's a lot of ways to automate this now through a lot of different inventory providers. So it's something to really look at. And the more I look out at listings, I'm looking at merchandising all the time in our space, and I'm just not seeing a lot of this being done. So really good opportunity for you to stand out from the competition. So at HomeNet and vAuto, we thought about this. We're like, well, let's make sure we're driving best practices to make sure that if there is a dealer that wants to do this, we're telling them the right things to do. And in this kind of tight, spending less time researching vehicles year over year world that we're in, we thought like nav and Bluetooth relevant short equipment descriptions are really going to be the winners. That's the way consumers want to see it. But we actually found that it was the opposite, and putting the more detailed Bluetooth connection, navigation system, putting that in the overlay actually pulled better with consumers when we were showing them side by sides. Again, remembering it's not just equipment, there's also condition. There's also other stories about the inventory really, really quick that we could put in there. Another best practice is, this is a little bit different than the one you're looking at. So the car has nav. I've seen dealers put that actually in the third exterior photo, almost like a teaser. You're not obviously looking at the nav in the photo, but it's compelling them to dig deeper. Oh, this has navigation. Oh, this has new tires. There's going to be photos of the tires later on in the photo stream, and you've just engaged them further. I would say whether you're doing it with the equipment or with the condition details that they're looking at in the photo, or it's something that's kind of a teaser, either strategy is a good strategy if you're not doing it at all, and it's just things that you can kind of play around with and see what works best. I've also seen in a photo stream, maybe you get through all the exterior photos, a couple interiors, and there's a message that appears. It's not actually the vehicle at all. It's something about your reputation in the community as a dealership, or your certified program or your service program. Kind of call those billboard images or quick commercials in the photo, just to talk up a little bit more about you and how you serve the community. It's just a good opportunity for some dealership branding that not everybody is taking advantage of. So really good, relevant content in the photo. But let's not forget about the items lower in the vehicle details page, and that's the description. Another really great conversation I have with dealers. You know, there's dealers that I talk to that write them themselves. That's great. There's ones that use technology. I think the best practice is somewhere in the middle, because you want to have that speed factor to be able to get inventory quickly merchandised and online. And if you're looking at several hundred units on your lot, it may just be hard to get to every unit and write a description that stands out. Technology has evolved over the years, and across many inventory tools, there's vehicle description generators that can really help you at least get started, or at least get a vehicle description on that car while it's going through reconditioning. Shoot a couple photos. Make sure you get that car priced to market quickly when it's going through reconditioning. And then you have a fully merchandised car. Yes, it can get better later, but you get that job done earlier. Now, I will say that descriptions get 27% more vehicle details pages than those without. Couple reasons for that. There is the content itself and how that appeals to car shoppers, especially on third-party sites where you can get kind of a teaser of the description on the search results page, and you can click deeper into the vehicle details page. And then there's also the overall SEO value on your website of having really descriptive VIN-level stories about your inventory in the description. And then there's also just we'll talk about this in a second, third-party sites more and more are starting to reward dealers for fully merchandising inventory. So having a description on there, whether it's auto-generated or written, is critical. Now, another best practice, because again, we are the subject matter experts, and we can write really compelling stories about our vehicles. We do that in the description. So one way to do it is let the technology work for you, automate that description, and then as you work through everything, go back and do a re-merchandising strategy, where maybe that car's been sitting 20, 25 days. Let's change up the description. Let's change up the photos. Let's do a new overlay on it. Let's do something a little different. Really good opportunity to weigh in on how that car should be described, but still keeping you efficient. So you've got your photos, your overlays, your description. You've got obviously a fully VIN-decoded car, so you've got equipment showing. You're kind of there, right? You've got your basic merchandising done. Well, how do we step the game up? And two things really come to mind. The first one is video, being able to do either slideshow videos based off of the photos. That's a good quick win, similar to the pre-merchandising of shooting a quick photo and doing an automatic description. There's also the live walk-around videos where you actually just kind of go and do a live video, walk around that car, get in the interior, have it be a little bit more interactive. That's really good. Again, if you're working with a lot of units on your lot, it's going to be kind of hard to prioritize, though, doing a live walk-around video on every car. So a couple ways you can do it. First, if you have a distressed piece of inventory, it's aging out, you need to tell a deeper story, really good opportunity to go in and do a live walk-around video. Also, if you have a car that is just really hot in the market, market day supply is favorable, but it's not, there's others out there in the market, you want to compete and sell quickly, another good way to tell a deeper story. No matter which end of the kind of aging spectrum you use to shoot live video, videos get around 18% more vehicle details page click-throughs than those without video. So there's that engagement piece from the consumer that's starting to come back. But we also are starting to see that the immersive kind of interactive video is evolving into 360 spin technology. So this is where you kind of, pretty easy process, stand in front of the car, walk around that car, using several different providers that are now in the space, and you as a consumer can click and zoom and kind of spin that car around to really be able to focus on the areas of the car that matter to you. Different from a video, it is moving around like a video, but the consumer is kind of choosing their path and choosing to focus in on the pieces that they want to focus on to make a better decision. 360 capture technology, definitely not a new thing overall. It's been in the real estate industry for several years now. If you've recently bought a home, you'll see that on different listing sites. Also, the classic example is Zappos and what they do in terms of their interactive 360 spins for the shoot product. So now we have it in automotive. It's being there's more solutions, as I said before, offering this. There's also a lot more integration and more improved technology through website providers and third-party classified sites, actually set up more than ever to actually display this type of technology. So it was something you looked at a couple years ago, and you didn't really think that the auto industry was where it needed to be to scale it. Take a look again. It's definitely made a lot of improvements over the last 12 to 16 months. A lot of really good data that I see out there around 360 capture and how that's driving more engagement on a vehicle details page. We just talked about video. We ran a consumer study right in the beginning of this year, really thinking about the consumer's perspective on dealers that are leveraging 360 technologies. And recently, consumers that recently purchased inventory said it was extremely helpful. And the second bullet I think is really strong. 80% of consumers who browse for vehicles online, they really think that 360 displays reflect positively on the dealer's reputation. This is back to the photo backgrounding example, where if we're using these more immersive, differentiated merchandising features, it's helping them make decisions faster, but it's also reflecting on you as a business owner, on you as a dealership, for really putting your best foot forward and delivering innovative solutions to help the car buying process online. So we went through all those merchandising components. Let's take a quick aside and kind of think about, well, where does this inventory need to be, right? We're seeing, anywhere from 10 to 15 different advertising sites that dealers are using to advertise the inventory. That tends to increase slightly year over year. There's just more third-party sites, more opportunities to showcase the inventory. I think that is good. You want to get your product out in a broad way, but always think about your target market. Think about how you want to target consumers on those different third-party sites or websites. But also remember there's evolving other platforms and marketplaces. And this has just been one that over the last year has really blown up. And that's Facebook Marketplace, free to dealers to list the inventory on, used car site. You can see there on the stats just really, really growing in terms of keywords, in terms of people visiting Marketplace overall, and then keywords specifically to automotive. They have several integrated providers to get your inventory there. I'm sure you're working with one of them. And you have the ability to really capture eyeballs. And a lot of dealers now are shifting advertising dollars to Google and to Facebook to do more retargeting. I think that's a really smart strategy. Really good way to complement like a retargeting campaign you're doing on Facebook is also listing your inventory on Facebook Marketplace. So you're capturing them from a retarget, kind of low funnel perspective, and you're also capturing them on Marketplace from a high funnel search perspective. I alluded to this a couple different times throughout the webinar today, but there are third-party sites that are really starting to reward dealers for fully merchandising inventory, and AutoTrader is one of them. Their relevance search really prioritizes merchandising completeness, and we'll send the webinar presentation out. You can go to that URL if you can take a quick picture, but if not, don't worry about it. You'll get access to the presentation. That digs deeper into AutoTrader and what they're doing from a relevant search perspective and all the different components of merchandising that are driving improved search rankings when consumers are shopping for cars on that site. A lot of that we talked about today. AutoTrader isn't the only one. Cars.com also does this. They also reward merchandising. And if you go to their site as well, where they talk about kind of how cars show up, it's the business-to-business side, just like AutoTrader, the business-to-business side of Cars.com. They really talk about that. So there is that consumer component, but there's also that reward on third-party sites. And there's also that SEO value that we talked about in terms of telling those VIN-specific stories on your inventory. Okay, so we kind of talked about a lot of different things when it came to merchandising, kind of bring it together into a single strategy. And I've talked a lot about two sides of the coin, being able to efficiently merchandise the inventory, whether that means having a solid process for merchandising the inventory before it goes to reconditioning or new car just off the truck, or whether it's understanding things like market day supply and being able to make decisions about how to prioritize what type of vehicles you merchandise and how deep you go into them. And then there's also that effectiveness side. There's actually doing it with quality and driving the consumer behavior that you're looking for. So on the efficiency side, this is and if you've been on one of the webinars, you may have seen me use this before. This is a 5 rooftop dealer group. Just kind of hid the name here, but this is really what's happening. What they're doing is they're measuring their time to market digitally. They're digital frontline ready. You can look at how they're doing it in terms of photo time to market, pricing time to market, description time to market. They're looking at over a 28-day rolling. They're also looking in terms of current month and then that versus previous month. Two quick things to call out. So the first thing is the description time to market. It's 0 all the way down. What does that mean? They're letting the technology work for them. As soon as that unit hits their inventory platform, they're automatically getting a description generated on that inventory. The second thing is how you can kind of operationalize and scale this across your group or across your store, even if it's a single store. In the group example, you can look at dealer number 5, over 13 days to get photos on the vehicle, on a vehicle on average. Look at dealer 1, that's just over 8 days. So what can dealer 1 share with dealer 5 to kind of share best practices? Maybe there is a pre-merchandising strategy in place. Maybe there's an efficiency. Maybe there's technology they're using that is helping them get the job done faster. So it's really creating these different conversations based on the efficiency of merchandising the inventory. So the last one is from SpeedShift Media. This is a study they put out in 2017. So a couple years old. I just think the story is so compelling and wraps up everything that we've talked about today. And what they did was they looked at 50,000 vehicles across over 100 dealerships for 6 months, and they kind of mapped every kind of engagement or click on a vehicle details page to one of these 6 categories: form submissions, media, links, text chat, social sharing, and then just kind of an other bucket of irrelevant clicks. And what they wanted to see was the more these different components or these different clicks on the VDP are engaged with, does that connect with the vehicle actually selling? Like, does more form submissions equate to the car selling? The more forms are coming in, the closer the vehicle is to selling. Or is that not the case? So what they found was photo and media engagement really drove that propensity to sell. That the more the photos were being interacted with, the more the videos were being played, 360s, all these things that I've talked about are connecting deeper to getting closer to the vehicle actually selling, while the other ones, while they're still important, I want to be clear that you shouldn't not do the other things. You definitely should. There was no correlation between the more interaction with that behavior, meaning the vehicle is closer to selling. So what that means is we need to really start to measure and understand what merchandising is driving consumer behavior what new trends and immersive technologies are out there that are helping them make these decisions, and then really be able to have technology in place to measure vehicle details page engagement. So you're putting strategies in place that are keeping your dealership efficient when merchandising, but also really creating effective listings that really differentiate you from the competition. So that's what I have today. Definitely have plenty of time for questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Russ. Let's turn it over to our audience. I want to say personally, I thought the one question was very interesting. Well, one of the data points that you mentioned, that only 12% of dealers believe that they stand out online. And leading into this audience question, I sort of just want to ask, if you're a dealer in a specific area that has the same brand, the same type of inventory, and reasonably the same vehicle incentives as your competitors, what are some of the ways that you can merchandise what you have to drive interest and differentiate yourself online?
That is a good one. And you have to answer it kind of from the new car perspective and from the used car perspective. So we'll start with the used car perspective. Because we can obviously stock varieties of inventory, but maybe we're all stocking very similar types of used car inventory. This is where those differentiated immersive technologies can come into play, 360, video, telling that deeper story. Another really good another good best practice on the used car side is bringing in the really, really detailed equipment details. So build data, for example. So are there packages on that car that help that stand out from maybe another car out there in the market that doesn't have those packages included in it, whether it's trim or whether it's an entertainment package inside the inventory. So are there these little nuggets inside of the used car that are a little bit above the average that help you stand out? On the new car side, it's certainly more challenging, and that's when you have similar brands in the area, having a lot of similar product. I think a lot of the best practices do kind of connect from used car to new car. You just got to approach them a little differently. On the new car side, definitely tougher to get full photo coverage on that new car. So when you look at the competition, are they using stock photos? Can you win by using real photos of the inventory? Can you get that done more efficiently to earn those vehicle details page clicks in those search results pages? Also, the immersive technology helps being able to capture video, also being able to capture immersive 360s with the cars that make sense. And then I'll go back to the overlay piece. So there could be, let's say you're competing, same car, same piece of inventory. Are they doing custom callouts in the photos to really raise up things like the incentive program? Are they really raising up things like the new features on that car? Are they doing it within the photo, or are they relying on it being in the description of the equipment list? Just a couple different things that you can do, even with the same type of inventory, to stand out from the competition.
All right. Here's another question from our audience, and some of this is shorthand abbreviation, so let me know if I correctly identified this. But regarding photo engagement, how does a consumer know there are multiple photos from the search results page? Don't they have to go to the vehicle detail page to know that?
Not always. What you see on a lot of third-party sites and also websites is they'll list the number of photos right there on the search results page. So that will obviously raise awareness there. If that's not happening, the other way is cars that have more photos, whether it's a rule on the website side or it's a search algorithm on the third-party site side, those are going to get, if they're fully merchandised, indexed higher. So while the consumer might not know, it's still going to be the photo that best matches their search and then prioritized based on merchandising completeness, which means multiple photos.
Okay. I wanted to ask regarding how to cater these ads to specific consumers. As you mentioned, new vehicle customers and used vehicle customers are different and they want different things. So it makes sense to promote certain aspects of the vehicle, certain qualifications. But for a dealer that knows their audience, they know who they're trying to target the ad to, is there a way to utilize a third party but still inject some of the flavor, the knowledge of a dealer's own customer base in that advertisement?
Yeah, I think that, Jackie, just to make sure I'm tracking right with you. You're saying, hey, between new and used car inventory, you want to create that more personalized, more targeted merchandising experience, and are there technologies out there that enable you to do that as a dealership? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, so technologies that help generate those types of paragraphs, catering the language, but at the same time, using a technology and using myself, my knowledge as a dealer, to speak to my own audience. Is there a way to sort of use a middle ground there?
Definitely. So, yeah, great question, and thank you for asking it. So, technology has evolved. I'll say that first and foremost, where maybe the automated descriptions, the automated custom callouts that were even existing 3 years ago, they've improved a lot as merchandising becomes more important to us as dealer operators and also to consumers. Now, there's more work to be done for sure. I think that one thing dealers can do in many inventory tools is have settings, be able to get in there and configure different why buy statements, different statements about how they are in the community. Also, there's different awards and accolades that you can choose to inject inside of your description and your callouts, and you have control over which ones you put there. That's another way to kind of let the technology work for you, but put your own little flair on it. But some things that are starting to emerge more and more now are being able to do custom callouts or do vehicle descriptions, do merchandising actually specific to the sites you're advertising on. So if it's a website, your own website, maybe you want to do overlays, maybe you want to describe that car or talk about the dealership experience differently than a site like AutoTrader or Cars.com when you're really competing on the inventory itself. So stay tuned for more of that starting to come. I can see that hitting the surface over the next 6 months, 12 months, being able to do a lot more targeted and personalized merchandising per the different advertising site. And then obviously the nirvana here would be personalized to the consumer, which I can see that being something that also starts to crop up in our space.
All right. How does merchandising impact SEO and search results on third-party sites?
Talked about that a little bit through the webinar. So I'll start with the SEO from a Google perspective. So they're changing that constantly, but what seems to remain very consistent is the more descriptive you are about the inventory, whether that's in the description, whether that's in the headers. Even, you can have a conversation with your technology company in terms of how the photos are appearing on your website and how those URLs are generated. If that can also help you as well, if it's specific to the inventory. The more you're telling that VIN-specific story, the better you're going to show up, whether that's a paid or an unpaid strategy on a site like Google or Facebook. Now, when you talk about third-party sites, we talked about AutoTrader and relevance and how merchandising completeness, description, photos, competitive pricing, video are really impacting and influencing how vehicles show up in that list. And then Cars.com are doing very similar things as well.
All right. I think we have time for one more question. What are some best practices for dealers when it comes to using image overlays to differentiate their dealership online?
So, again, I think this is the lowest hanging fruit, biggest opportunity that a lot of dealers I talk to are missing out on. And it's putting content inside of the photo, leveraging image overlays different than we've leveraged them historically. And a couple different ways to best practices, things I've seen. The first one is the equipment details. I showed a couple examples there. If the car has heated seats, if the car has navigation, Apple CarPlay, all of those features that consumers are trying to search for, but maybe they're not putting that in their search parameters. This is a really good opportunity to do that, especially on the new car side, on the CPO side, with cars that are low mileage, a little bit newer with newer tech systems. So being able to put those types of equipment details, those technology details in there, definitely a best practice. Also condition, reference that McKinsey study, also reference a lot of studies that were done around condition information being something that the consumers are looking for, and us as dealer operators being transparent about providing those condition details. So new tires on the inventory, fresh paint, fully cleaned, different types of messages like that are really kind of disclosing different things about what you did to that car before it got ready for them to test drive. And Carfax, one owner, and different things like that also help. I'll say one more best practice about that. So when do you put that in? When do you inject that? Versus do you put it on the first photo? Do you put it on photos further down in the stream? A couple of ways to think about that. I think that you don't want to have it. You don't want to have like image overlay overload where you've got your dealership branding and another custom call out, and it becomes distracting. If your dealership branding is a little bit less, if you're not doing a banner across the bottom, if it's just a logo, maybe that's an opportunity to put that on the first photo and stand out on third-party sites like AutoTrader. If it's your website and you're really not really competing against anyone except for the right inventory matched to the right buyer, really good opportunity to inject that into the first photo just so you can differentiate. Maybe you have 5, 7 similar used car units, but there's a little bit difference. One of them has a certain trim level, one of them has some technology that the others don't have. Really good opportunity to call that out on the first photo to earn that click and drive the engagement. In either strategy, injecting that, some custom callouts, into the interior photos a little bit later in the photo stream just helps with that deeper engagement and helps them stay kind of moving through to tell that full story of the vehicle.
Okay. I'm going to ask another. So one of our viewers says that we have a rule that a vehicle doesn't exist until it has been fully reconditioned, because we find that if a consumer sees a vehicle before it's ready, it can have an adverse effect or even devalue the car in their eyes. So how do you overcome that if you post photos online immediately?
Really good question, and totally right. When I asked that question, I agree. If you have a car, I'm going to put it into 2 different scenarios. So mentioned this a little bit earlier. If you have a car from auction or a car that came in on trade and it doesn't look very good, it needs a lot of work on the exterior, just more than just a simple little clean and wash and take a couple photos, you want to wait for that. You do want to wait until that car is cleaned and reconditioned, because you do want to put your best foot forward. That's kind of that more overarching best practice. The other one that you really need to be careful of is if your product is more luxury line vehicles. And you have BMWs, you have Mercedes, you have other luxury line vehicles, and you're selling those either from a CPO perspective and off-lease perspective, which I'm sure you're doing a lot of off-lease units if you're a luxury brand. The quality and kind of the presentation of that unit really does matter on that target buyer. So that's just another reason to use your best judgment. And if the car is dirty, if it's not going to match the high standards that a luxury buyer would have, I would be cautious to put that on. Maybe you can have like a base level model on the luxury line that you might want to just try that out with. But definitely from the luxury, you got to be careful. And if the car if you use your eye and use your judgment and just needs a lot of work, you really want to be cautious. But remember, there's trade-ins, there's off-lease cars that are ready to go right away. And I'm not talking about full interior 24 photos. I'm talking about 1 to 3 photos just to get something out there to help you show up higher in a search results, but also have you make that connection with consumers.
All right. I think that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thank you to today's audience for the questions. If you asked a question that we didn't get a chance to answer, HomeNet will follow up by email. If you learned something from this session, please tell your peers about it. The recording will be available in about an hour. You'll find it at autonews.com/powertraining. When the webinar ends, a survey will pop up on your screen. Your feedback helps us get better. Thanks again to Russ and HomeNet for bringing us this presentation, and to you for joining us. On behalf of everyone at Automotive News, have a great rest of your day.